Maintaining an appropriate T level can change your whole life. Most men start to see changes in their hormone levels in their 30s. Experience and results matter. So what are you waiting for? Get your T levels checked today by local, experienced, and trusted men's health experts. They've helped thousands of men since 2011. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Call Revive today and schedule your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Hey, this is Chris from JCW's. If anything rivals our burgers, it's our bacon. It makes the perfect combination with our guacamole, jalapeno, or our hickory barbecue burgers. JCW's, quality and a lot of it.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
A delay-free drive on all the Valley freeways, but in Utah County, the Spanish Fork area, we do have delays both directions of Highway 89 near Thistle, between Thistle and Birdseye. Pioneer Day savings with the pioneers of no residue carpet cleaning. Only $25 per room. Minimum supply. You don't have to clean today, but you do have to schedule. Online or at zerores.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we're already up to 95 degrees right now under partly cloudy skies, and it'll hit 99 or possibly 100 with a chance for thunder showers this afternoon. The highs climb back above 100 by Friday and Saturday. Again, 95 degrees at KSL News Radio. 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The headlines say that Florida has adopted a new curriculum that will teach students about how slavery benefited those who were enslaved. The idea that slavery benefited slaves is preposterous, of course, but Florida Governor Ron DeSantis simply perpetuated that was what the curriculum was about. Vice President Kamala Harris immediately jumped on that for political purposes, criticized it vehemently. But beyond the headlines, what are the people who actually created the curriculum saying? It just might be time to think again. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
All right, so we want to back up and think again about all of this. There's been a lot of things happening in the news, a lot of things that have become very political from the left and from the right equally. And lost in all of that, I think, are some really important principles, some really crucial parts of our history, and how we go about teaching that actually matters. But so often, because of the instant certainty, the immediate reactions, the political posturing, it keeps us a safe distance from having the right conversation. So, of course, the big headline has been around this new curriculum in the state of Florida and how it teaches slavery. Word leaked out that it was teaching that slaves benefited from slavery, which is absolutely ludicrous and preposterous and any other pejorative you want to lace onto that. Vice President Kamala Harris immediately jumped on that, traveled to Florida to criticize the new curriculum.
How is it that anyone could suggest that in the midst of these atrocities, that there was any benefit to being subjected to this level of dehumanization?
So as Vice President Harris, I don't think she read the curriculum. And so I think she made a political statement, and it worked. Not to be outdone, Governor Ron DeSantis, speaking to reporters here in the state of Utah last week, shrugged his shoulders, said he had nothing to do with the curriculum, and took a guess at what it might be about.
Well, you should talk to them about it. I mean, I didn't do it, and I wasn't involved in it. But I think what they're doing is I think that they're probably going to show some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life. But the reality is, all of that is rooted in whatever is factual. They listed everything out. And if you have any questions about it, just ask the Department of Education. You can talk about those folks. But I mean, these were scholars who put that together. It was not anything that was done politically.
Okay, 3 strikes and you're out on the governor for that one. I think Vice President Harris was wrong in instant certainty in terms of what the curriculum was. Governor DeSantis was absolutely wrong in suggesting what it might be, which caused the ruckus to begin with. Strike number 2 was shrugging his shoulders and saying, I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't involved. And 3, pointing fingers that if you have a problem, go talk to the people who created the curriculum because that wasn't me, that wasn't political. That doesn't work. That's not what leadership looks like. So I think both Vice President Harris and Governor DeSantis were wrong on this. So let's go to the source. Radical stuff, I know. Dr. William Allen is a Black American, former chairman of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. He's now a member of Florida's African American History Standards Work Group, which created the curriculum. So he responded to the criticism from Vice President Harris and explained what is actually in the curriculum.
Well, I can't answer critics whom I haven't seen or heard. The only criticism I've encountered so far is a single one that was articulated by the Vice President, and which was an error. As I stated in my response to the Vice President, it was categorically false. It was never said that slavery was beneficial to Africans. What was said, and anyone who reads this will see this with clarity, it is the case that Africans proved resourceful, resilient, and adaptive, and were able to develop skills and aptitudes which served to their benefit, both while enslaved and after enslavement.
So that's Dr. William Allen, again, part of the group that created the curriculum. I actually love the component that he says, look, the Africans that were brought here in slavery were resourceful, resilient, and adapted, and developed skills and aptitudes that served them both while they were enslaved and after enslavement. There's a whole bunch of principles in there that are worth celebrating for everybody. Now, Dr. William Allen also told ABC News that his great-grandfather, who was a slave, through his own resilience and resourcefulness and adaptiveness, was able to provide for his family and prosper after enslavement.
My great-grandfather came to this country through fraudulent inducement, looking for opportunity only to find himself a slave. But he had the pluck to seek opportunity, and that pluck that he brought with him provided the skills, provided the initiative that allowed him post-slavery to establish his family securely. And this is the story of millions of people.
So I think there's a component to how Black history is taught in schools in Florida that should be highlighting those very things. Everybody should learn from those skills, from those principles that those that were enslaved and then after enslavement used to rise above it. That's worth noting. That's worth looking at. That's worth celebrating. That's worth emulating. Now, I want to get to this important part of this Think Again moment. Dr. Allen talked about a couple of specific voices when it comes to slavery in their own voices, which I think is something that we really have to get back to whenever and wherever possible when it comes to history. Because far too often we're trying to do history from the lofty perch of where we stand today, often judging the past by where we are today, not recognizing it was a different world, it's a different country, and also recognizing that what they did and went through actually enabled us to be where we are today. So Dr. Allen talked about Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, and that what we should do as we teach history is we should actually go to their own words, not our interpretations.
Booker T. Washington titled his autobiography, Up from Slavery. That's his story, not our story. He told it. Frederick Douglass told the story of the mistress of his slave master teaching him to read, beginning that until she was shut down by the slave master. She pulled back the curtain just a bit so a beam of light shone through. And that was enough for him to take that beam and turn it through his own efforts into a flame of illumination that benefited him and his country. And these stories are legend. The people who lived the histories told the stories. The curriculum is about allowing the people who live the histories to speak in their own names for themselves, to tell their own stories.
I love that. To let those who lived the history speak for themselves, to tell their own story. Dr. Allen also shared that the accomplishment of other Black Americans post-slavery showed what principles in America actually work.
Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells in 1893 demonstrated in protesting the exclusion of blacks from the World Fair of 1893 amidst thousands of lynchings that the accomplishments of black people post-slavery were the accomplishments not just of Black Americans, but the accomplishments of American principles. And that is the truth that people seek to deny by erasing the stories of the people who lived through the histories.
So many important pieces in there. Again, if you allow just the headlines to drive it, if you just allow the politics to be the center of the universe, you come out with a crazy argument that isn't even based on reality in terms of what the curriculum actually is. I think Governor DeSantis dropped it, botched it, shrugged his shoulders, pointed fingers, and placed blame, and that's not what leadership looks like. I think Vice President Harris took an opportunistic moment and attacked with certainty something that she didn't know was the real story. I think what Dr. Allen has said is, look, let's let history speak for itself. Let those voices, let those who lived it tell their own stories, not our interpretations. If we really want to celebrate it, if we really want to move the country forward, we can value the dignity in what happened, what these people who were enslaved were able to do because they were resilient, because they were resourceful, and because they ended up in a place that gave them a path forward. We got to have a different discussion, especially when it comes to how we talk about history, all history in this country, if we actually want to move the country forward.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. On the way home,
4,000 Utahns with student loans will get a break.
Catch up on the day's biggest stories.
Record-setting temperatures plague cities all over the country.
Plus, traffic and weather every 10 minutes on the 9s. Get more from your drive with Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News. Weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Back in the day, a shoemaker was called a cobbler because the stone you walked on was called cobblestone. Or was it the other way around? But before you can walk on cobblestone, you have to lay it down. Of course, you can also use cobblestone in your garden or park strips, or, well, you get the idea. But where do you get good old-fashioned cobblestone? The dirt bag. Imagine the things you can do with it in your yard and garden. If you have an imagination, the dirt bag has what you need to bring that dream to life. Rock mulch? How about 11 different rock mulches? Playground chips for the kids? Yep, the dirt bag. For topsoil, sod, bark mulches, and pathway material called chat, the dirt bag. And with a dirt bag, your garden and yard you have in your imagination can be delivered right to your driveway. Or you can pick it up in bulk yourself. There's a reason everyone loves the dirt bag. Find out what the dirt bag can do for you at thedirtbag.com. Thedirtbag.com. You hear that? That's the sound your new water makes just before it gets to your bottle. You see, at Little Spring Water, they don't add a thing. It's the purest, cleanest, and healthiest water you can possibly drink. It's nature in a bottle. Little Spring Water is a family-owned and operated bottled water company right here in Utah, nestled in a beautiful canyon in Bear Lake. This spring has been in the family for 5 generations, and now it can be in yours as well. It's high-quality premium spring water packaged in a durable, recyclable bottle that won't spill or crack on you and can be refilled multiple times. No chemicals, no additives, just pure, clean, healthy water. And because Little Spring Water is local, you can get it at a fraction of the cost. Look for Little Spring Water at a grocery store near you. If you don't see it, ask a grocer for it by name. It is available at Lee's Marketplace and Ridley's Family Markets. Little Spring Water. It's nature in a bottle.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Call Yes today and we'll waive the service call fee with any HVAC, plumbing, or electrical system repair. The expert technicians at Yes are available 7 days a week to fix all of your heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical problems. Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. Proudly serving Utah for more than 45 years. Call now or visit theyesmancan.com for details, terms, and conditions.
You could throw your flip-flop at a bug.
Ew, a bug, get it.
But the chances of actually hitting it
Over there!
are statistically
It's still alive.
unlikely. Good thing nature's got your back. Stem bug killers combine powerful active ingredients found in plants, like lemongrass and geraniol, and scientifically engineer them into effective bug-fighting formulas, safe for use as directed around people, pets, and throughout the home. Stem, rooted in nature, optimized by science.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a website where parents think they're signing up for a state private school scholarship program turns out to have nothing to do with the state. The program hasn't started taking applications yet. Second, there aren't as many pelicans breeding on an island of the Great Salt Lake this year. Low water levels in past years may be to blame. And third, Irish singer Sinead O'Connor has passed away at the age of 56. Right now, 95 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, we've often talked about the fact that vice presidents often get the tough jobs, the dirty jobs, the unpleasant jobs, the really tough portfolio jobs. And when it comes to campaign season, the vice president often has to take on the really tough job, and that is being the attack dog for the administration. Of course, again, it doesn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat vice president. The roles are typically the same. You want to have the vice president do the attacking so that the president can stay above the fray, look very presidential. And it also gives the vice president an opportunity to get a little more exposure, which most vice presidents are all too happy to get. It also gives those vice presidents an opportunity to get very close to big-time donors and other organizations and groups that would be helpful if they happen to run for president in the next cycle after that. And so we're seeing that start to play out. Vice President Harris has had an interesting few years in the vice president's role with some mixed results. She's had moments where she seemed to be floundering. She's also had moments where she was very strong and delivered important message for the administration. And ramping up into the 2024 election cycle, they have unleashed the vice president. It has begun in terms of the campaign kinds of things. And so she is now traveling the country and often delivering pretty scathing remarks to President Biden's political adversaries. This is going to be the role, I think, that Vice President Kamala Harris gets to play from now until November of 2024. So the question is how is she doing? What is she learning? What is she saying? And the big test, of course, is it working? Will it work? Will it backfire? How does that actually play out? Now, if you missed the last segment, we were talking about some of the exchanges and the vice president going on the offensive when it comes to the curriculum being taught in the state of Florida regarding slavery. The vice president went right at it. I think it was a little bit of instant certainty in terms of what she was attacking, but she brought the heat, a very fiery tone in a speech given in Florida. Take a listen.
So who then would dare deny this history? Let us not let these politicians who are trying to divide our country win. Because you see, what they are doing is they are creating these unnecessary debates. This is unnecessary to debate whether enslaved people benefited from slavery. Are you kidding me?
So that was the vice president on the attack there. Again, in the last segment, we really broke it down in terms of what is in the curriculum. Not according to the vice president, not according to the governor, but according to the curriculum and the people who created it. It's a little different story. It's worth thinking again about. If you missed that, you should go back and listen to the podcast today when that goes up later this afternoon to get to the real heart of what's actually in the curriculum, not what people are inferring. But again, this is kind of the role the vice president's going to be playing from now until November of 2024. Also interesting, just a couple of days ago, the vice president gave a speech at a Latino advocacy group She condemned Texas leadership and border agents for acts of cruelty towards immigrants at the southern border.
Across our nation, extremist so-called leaders demonize, target, and attack immigrants. In Texas, we see reports that authorities have pushed children and pregnant women who crossed the Rio Grande back into the river. Inhumane and un-American.
So again, that's Vice President Harris. She also went on, lots to condemn for her in Florida, of course, including book bans, school libraries, and take a listen here.
Extremists, so-called leaders, for months have dared to ban books. Book bans in this year of our Lord 2023. Extremists here in Florida pass a law, Don't Say Gay, trying to instill fear in our teachers that they should not live their full life and love who they love. And now, on top of all of that, they want to replace history with lies. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not have it.
So those are all comments coming from the vice president just in the last week or so. And again, it is the role. She is going to use the words extremists. She's going to use MAGA Republicans. She's going to use right-wing crazies. She's going to go down that path again. It's the attack dog space. And we've seen this from both Republican and Democrat vice presidents over the years. They are the attack dogs when it comes to campaign and reelection. The question, I think, is it effective? Does it really move the needle? Clearly, it's playing to the base of the party. Clearly, it's playing to some of those big donors who are all about that. So the question then is, how effective is this really? And is this the best use of Vice President Harris? So again, whether you think the Biden administration and the president and the vice president should be reelected or not, that's not the issue. Let's just look at it from a strategy standpoint. Is this the best use? I always ask myself, and I always ask businesses and organizations when looking at the leader, is this highest and best use? And I wonder. I don't think this is a space being angry, being hostile, using a lot of pejoratives. I don't think that plays to Vice President Harris's strengths. I don't think it comes across as smart as she is. I don't think it comes across as authentic as I think she is. I don't think it positions her in terms of being a strong number two on the ticket. Because remember, there are many Americans who are worried about the age of President Biden. And so the vice president really matters. And so I think if I were a Democratic strategist, I would say, I'm not sure if we just put the vice president as the attack dog is the right strategy. I think she's got to be in places where she can use her brains and her ability to understand policy and to communicate that. I think that sends a much better message both to the base and the donors as much as it does to the rest of the public. It's interesting, a Pew Research Center poll last week showed that 59% of Americans viewed Harris unfavorably. Unfavorably, almost 60%. And here's the one thing that we do know about politics. Now, we know that negative campaigning can work, but we also know that in the process of that, the unfavorability goes higher. So if you're a Democratic strategist, do you really want the vice president who needs to be strong, who needs to be seen as someone who's ready to step into the Oval Office if needed? Do you really want to drive up the vice president's negatives from 60% to higher than that? What happens if the vice president gets up into the 70% range? That's not good for the Democrats. So again, I'm just talking strategy. So for me, the strategy has a pretty major pitfall to it. And that is that having Vice President Harris as the attack dog for President Biden, I don't think is good for the Biden-Harris ticket, because the vice president already has high negatives, high unfavorability. 60% is a big number. And if she's out there constantly attacking, those negatives, unfavorability numbers will go up. Now, she may land a few blows on whoever the Republican nominee ends up being, or she may be able to take some attacks at Republican-controlled Congress or some of the Republicans in the Senate or some of those kinds of folks. That may work. But I think it actually undermines the strength of the Biden-Harris ticket to strictly have her in attack dog mode, as opposed to doing some of the other things that she does a little bit better when it comes to policy, when it comes to strategy. And I actually think over the course of this administration, I do not think they have supported or deployed Vice President Harris in the best and most strategic way. I think there are other ways for that to be a real benefit to the Biden-Harris administration, again, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to talk about the border. Suzanne Monyuk's going to join us coming up next. Stick around.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. A judge is going to allow Tammy Daybell's aunt to speak on behalf of Tammy's mother when Lori Vallow Daybell is sentenced next week in Idaho. KSL News Radio's Adam Small explains.
Lori's defense attorneys asked the court not to allow Vicki Hoban to speak since Tammy's father and sister have already submitted victim impact statements in writing. Idaho law also requires people to be immediate family members to make a statement, and aunt does not fall under that definition. However, Judge Stephen Boyce rejected the defense's motions since Idaho does allow people to speak on behalf of immediate family who can't make a statement, like Tammy's mother who recently passed away. Lori Vallow Daybell has been convicted for conspiracy to kill Tammy, her current husband's late wife.
And Lori will also be sentenced on Monday for conspiracy and the murders of her children, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The plea bargain intended to keep Hunter Biden from going to prison on tax evasion charges fell apart in a Delaware courtroom today. The president's son wound up pleading not guilty to the charges, while the judge asked her prosecutors and Biden's lawyers to keep talking and brief her later on where the case stands. Sinead O'Connor, the Irish singer whose music put her at the top of the charts in the 1980s and 90s, has passed away at the age of 56. The Irish Times says her family issued a statement confirming her death. O'Connor recently converted to Islam and took the name Shahada Sadiqat, although she continued to perform as Sinead O'Connor. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up, but just barely, 1.5 points right now, and the NASDAQ down 56 points at this hour. And our KSL weather, we could see a thunderstorm this afternoon, but we're likely to see a high very close to 100 as well. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
This summer, the political season heats up.
By August, it'll be time for debates. Can you believe it?
We're planning coverage of the real issues, the important stories that impact how we live.
Listen each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Do you know how to tell if a clogged drain is something to worry about or not? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and I understand it's annoying and inconvenient, but sometimes a clogged drain can be a sign there's a more serious issue with your sewer main line. If the drains in the lowest level of your home aren't draining, or you flush a toilet and it comes up somewhere else like a shower or a floor drain, I'm urging you to look at this as more than just an annoyance. The last thing I want you to experience is a sewer backup. If you're a homeowner experiencing any of these issues, the first step would be to snake the line to see if it's just a blockage, which one of our drain techs can do for only $29. Yep, you heard that right. Any Hour Services will snake any drain line with normal access for only $29. Sinks, showers, tubs, toilets, floor drains, laundry drains, even that sewer main line that connects to the city. We'll snake any line for just $29. For help with your drain issues, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7700. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Looking for a trusted oral surgery practice? Look no further than Aspire Surgical. With a team of highly skilled and experienced board-certified oral and facial surgeons, Aspire Surgical offers a variety of surgical services, from wisdom teeth removal to dental implants to facial cosmetics. At Aspire Surgical, patient comfort and safety are top priorities. Their state-of-the-art facilities and advanced techniques ensure that patients receive the best possible care in a comfortable and safe environment. Visit their website at aspiresurgical.net or call 385-474-4952 to schedule a consultation today. Trust Aspire Surgical for all your oral surgery needs. Visit aspiresurgical.net or call 385-474-4952 to schedule a consultation today. Aspire Surgical, where your aspirations become a reality.
The UACPA supports certified professional accountants in Utah through ongoing professional education and leadership development for an ever-changing financial world. Find a CPA at uacpa.org.
My savings are gone.
Okay, where were they last?
Here, right before I spent them on that vacation to Aruba.
Weird. Not weird. Not saving now means no money later. For free ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
No freeway accidents to report, but we have had some slowdowns, and this is eastbound on I-84 as you're passing the Highway 89 junction near the power plant. Not really sure what's causing these delays, but if you're trying to get to Mountain Green, this may slow you down an extra 5 to 15 minutes. Win a Tempur-Pedic mattress and adjustable base this weekend at the grand opening of Snooze Mattress Company in Pleasant Grove. Come experience our exclusive dream mapping technology. Get mapped, get fitted, get sleep. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, a high of 99, possibly 100 today, with a chance for thunder showers this afternoon. And highs climb back above 100 by Friday and Saturday. 93 degrees, partly cloudy right now at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
There's a lot happening in regards to our southern border and America's immigration policy, and we want to cover all of it here on Inside Sources. A federal judge has ruled against the Biden administration's efforts to limit asylum eligibility for migrants. The Department of Justice is suing Texas for the state's border action. And that's not even all there is to talk about today. There's so many different things going on, including hearings with Secretary Mayorkas today. And we're really pleased to have Suzanne Moniak joining us. Of course, she covers immigration policy for Roll Call, helps us out all the time on this, and has literally stepped out of the hearing to talk to us today. Suzanne, thanks for squeezing us in on a very busy day.
Thanks, as always, for having me on the show.
So let's start with the Mayorkas hearing. I know a lot of this has been theatrics and a lot of finger-pointing and placing blame from the Republican side of the aisle on this. Any substance in any of this, or is this more performative politics today?
Well, the Democrats in the committee would certainly say it was performative politics, and many of them did. Congresswoman Escobar, for example, explicitly called it performance during the hearing. But largely it was an oversight hearing of the Department of Homeland Security, where Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was testifying. And he faced a lot of questions, mostly from Republicans, on the number of border crossings at the southwest border. And yes, of course, Republicans are building an impeachment case against the secretary, and this hearing absolutely contributes to that.
Yeah, so let's get into some of the things that we know for sure, the things that will go well beyond the hearing today. You wrote in Roll Call that the judge struck down the Biden administration's asylum restrictions. Just for our listeners, just frame that up a little bit. What did the ruling actually do, and what comes next on that front?
Absolutely, and I think it's also worth noting that while today the Homeland Security Secretary is facing a lot of heat from Republicans, this litigation from yesterday was actually brought by the American Civil Liberties Union and other more left-leaning advocates. So it just really shows how the administration is just really getting criticism from all sides when it comes to its immigration policies. Yesterday's ruling was against a policy limiting asylum eligibility for migrants crossing the U.S.-Mexico border in between ports of entry. That policy is, Republicans, not enough for Republicans. However, it's too restrictive for immigrant advocates. And so we saw litigation in California federal court, and the judge overseeing that case ruled that the policy was illegal, and it essentially violates laws we already have in the books guaranteeing asylum access for migrants who make a claim for protection on U.S. soil.
And you noted in your piece, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters yesterday that the Justice Department was going to appeal that. What does that look like? What are we likely to see there?
So right now, even though the judge has ruled that the asylum policy is illegal, nothing has changed on the ground yet, and that's because the judge paused the effect of his ruling for 14 days. That's going to give the Biden administration time to file an appeal, which, as you mentioned, they have already said that they intend to do, and that they also intend to request an extension of that 14-day stay. So they are going to try to keep this contested asylum policy in place, essentially while appellate litigation continues.
And then you also noted that the administration was looking at some things relating to those coming from Cuba, Venezuela, Haiti, and Nicaragua. Give us a sense of that.
Well, the Biden administration has pointed to that program, which allows, as you said, citizens from Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba to apply for temporary permission, essentially, to live in the U.S. And they've said that that legal pathway essentially justifies its ability to impose asylum restrictions on those crossing the border in between ports of entry. And so this is all part of that carrot and stick approach that the Biden administration has taken to its migration policy, where it aims to disincentivize migrants from crossing the border in between ports of entry at unscheduled times that make it more operationally difficult for border agents to manage, and to incentivize them instead to apply for asylum at ports of entry legally and at scheduled times.
Right, and yeah, you also noted that they've added an app to be able to get those scheduling things going. And just give us a little more insight, because I do think it's fascinating. This has become one of those wraparound kind of issues where you have the Biden administration taking heat both from the left and from the right on this. Where does this really put the administration, and how do they get their footing on this and try to step forward?
This certainly puts the administration between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
When it comes to that carrot and stick migration approach, what they're seeing are immigrant advocates are suing them over the stick, while Republicans and more conservative states are suing them over the carrot. And so they're having litigation on all sides over this migration approach, and certainly it's going to complicate their efforts to manage the border how they see fit once they have court rulings and joining policies that they wanted to put in place. I'll note there's also separate litigation challenging the so-called carrot that you'd mentioned of these so-called parole programs allowing certain migrants to apply to enter the U.S. legally. So if that were to be struck down, and also the asylum restrictions if those ultimately are struck down by an appellate court, we could see the Biden administration's essentially entire border strategy enjoined in court.
Wow. That's not a good day for the administration on any way you slice or dice that. That's not helpful. Give us a little insight on the Department of Justice suing Texas and Governor Greg Abbott over how they're approaching things on the Rio Grande.
Yes, in this case, it's the Biden administration bringing the lawsuit as opposed to the one being sued for a change. And in this instance, they are suing Texas over the state's decision to put up essentially a floating barrier in the Rio Grande made of water buoys to, kind of create their own border with Mexico. And the Biden administration has said that this violates river protection laws. There's also some concerns from Democratic members of Congress that it may infringe on treaties that the U.S. has reached with Mexico. And so this is, just continuing to escalate the battle between the state of Texas and the federal government, who have been frequent opponents on immigration since President Biden took office.
And so as you look at this, Suzanne, and you see this from so many different points on the compass, is this one of those where there is a path, or are we just so mired in the muck of the politics from both the left and the right, and obviously rolling into a 2024 presidential election cycle? Are there any things where there are any common sense folks in Congress who are saying, hey, can we just target laser focus on a couple of particular areas where there does seem to be some broad agreement?
There certainly are those efforts. We've seen that in the agricultural space, for example. We've seen Democrats and Republicans come together and try to propose reforms to the agricultural visa system. We saw that with legislation that passed the House last session that was bipartisan, that would have put a lot of farm workers on a path to citizenship, as well as revising the visa program. And earlier this year, we saw a bipartisan bill that was more narrow, that would have just targeted that H-2A farm worker visa program. We've also seen it some with Afghan allies who are currently living in the U.S. under temporary status and don't have a way to, adjust their immigration status to be permanent residents. We have a bipartisan bill proposed in the House and Senate earlier this month that would address that population. And so there are these more narrow bipartisan immigration efforts that we do see, but ultimately we just haven't seen a lot of movement even on those. because we have this split Congress with a Democratic Senate and Republican House that seem just very far apart politically.
Yeah, I just think it's so important if we can get some of those things going. The problem is when either, regardless of who's in the White House, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, when these things are done by executive order or administrative action, they always end up in the courts, and the court works its way through, and we wonder why the court is so politicized. I think if Congress would do their job, and if we could start with some of those areas of agreement, I think that's the beginning of better days when it comes to getting to some real solutions. Suzanne, I know you're in the middle of a very busy day. We'll let you get back inside the hearing to watch what happens there. Suzanne Moniak, of course, is covering immigration policy for Roll Call, one of our inside sources and trusted sources when it comes to getting the real story relating to immigration. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks again.
All right. Great stuff there, as always, from Suzanne. She always helps us see all the pieces that are going on. And it is the administration right now is in a very tough spot. They're getting legal challenges from the left and the right. And as Suzanne said, really the bulk of their border policy is in court right now. That's not good for the administration. I don't think it's good for the country either.
When news breaks early in the morning.
Explosion occurred around 5:30 this morning.
2 people injured in an explosion at a chemical plant.
It's a normal operation going on here with some individuals working on a tank.
KSL reporters race to the scene.
There's no ongoing risk to the public.
Get breaking news and the top stories. Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda.
We do have a reporter on the scene, and we'll have more for you coming up.
Weekdays 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Let's cut to the chase. $25 per room for the best no residue carpet cleaning. Zero Res pioneered the no residue difference, and to celebrate Pioneer Day, Zero Res will clean your carpets for just $25 per room. Other companies say they clean as good as Zero Res, but it's just not the same. Zero Res has patented technology to ensure you get the best cleaning possible, and yes, those patents mean that no one else is cleaning like this. Celebrate Pioneer Day with the pioneers of no residue cleaning, Zero Res carpet and air duct cleaning. Today and tomorrow only, they are cleaning the Wasatch Front for just $25 per room. Minimums and restrictions apply, but there are no maximums. Clean 5 rooms, 6 rooms, clean the whole house. Just $25 per room. You don't have to clean today, but you do have to get on the schedule. $25 per room, Pioneer Day savings ends on the 27th. Schedule today, visit zerorez.com. That's ZEROREZ.com.
Smart, connected, modern. Discover life-enhancing independent living services at Trio South Ogden. They do things a little differently there because you're different. With everything you need to support your best self, you'll find that joy isn't just for the young, it's for the young of heart. Trio South Ogden's signature programs provide a unique approach to wellness that brings living well and well-being to life. To learn more, contact Trio South Ogden at 801-475-4004 or visit triosouthodden.com.
Embarrassed by ugly yellow toe fungus?
Living with toe fungus it's embarrassing. I was afraid to take my socks off. I hid my yellow and crumbly toes from everybody.
Introducing Crystal Flush. Crystal Flush is the only FDA-registered 2-in-1 home treatment that attacks your toe fungus from both the inside and out. Crystal Flush's new and different combination system knocks out toe fungus for good. Guaranteed.
Crystal Flush is different. After just a few weeks, my fungus was gone. I mean, 100% disappeared. Crystal Flush was the only thing that ever worked. So if you're skeptical because you tried a bunch of other stuff, Crystal Flush is different. This is a game changer.
Crystal Flush is now available without a prescription, but it is not available in stores. Get your risk-free supply today. Go to crystalflush.com. That's CRYSTAL flush.com. Stop being embarrassed by ugly yellow toenails. Go to crystalflush.com or call 800-204-4484.
If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. Even though that's an old adage, it's still very true today. And it's especially true of your old 401k. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, asking you to get that old 401k in sight and out of the company you no longer work for. But don't roll it into your new 401k. That could be one of the worst things you do. Of course that's easy. But when has the easiest way ever been the best way? Instead, call Trajan Wealth and learn about all of your options, including a way to earn an upfront bonus of up to 25% for your future income just for rolling it over. That's right. You could earn up to a 25% bonus for your retirement income just for rolling that 401k over with Trajan Wealth. Don't roll that 401k into your new company plan. Don't do it without calling Trajan Wealth first. Call 801-899-7600 or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
At KSL News Radio, we have a 30-year legacy of honoring Utah teachers, but we can't do it without your help. Please tell us about an important teacher in your life on the KSL Teacher Tribute Wall, presented by Cypress Credit Union. Each month, one lucky teacher wins a $500 gift card from Cypress Credit Union, a $250 gift card to Harmon's, plus season tickets to Hale Center Theater. Say thanks to your teacher today at kslnewsradio.com/teacher from Cypress Credit Union and KSL News Radio.
Dave and Dujanovic.
One of the best ways to get listeners involved in the conversation is to have a clear opinion.
Listener participation. We invite phone calls all the time, and Dave and we're learning things from them too.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a judge in Idaho has decided to let a relative of Tammy Daybell testify next week at Lori Vallow Daybell's sentencing on murder and conspiracy charges. Second, Sinead O'Connor, the Irish singer known as much for controversy as for her music, has died at the age of 56. And third, Hunter Biden, the president's son, wound up pleading not guilty to tax evasion charges today after a plea bargain with prosecutors fell apart. 93 degrees, partly cloudy right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Of course, one of the bigger parenting trends of the 21st century has been helicopter parenting. Parents hovering over, keeping their kids close, and many out of a sincere desire to protect them, ensure their child's success. But the results of that are pretty interesting. Has the parenting style ended up with a whole host of downstream unintended consequences on child development? And should parents make adjustments to truly help their kids succeed and grow into mature and functional adults? And some of this comes down to real legal issues as well in terms of good parenting, bad parenting, neglect, and so on. Here to help us break all of that down, we're really pleased to have back on the program once again Maya Jaredot, of course, with the Deseret News. And Maya, great piece on the great question, is the end of helicopter parenting finally here? You started by talking about something going on in Connecticut. Give us the baseline there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Boyd. So Connecticut passed a law that will give parents and, by extension, children greater freedom. It's called a Reasonable Childhood Independence Law. And what it will do is it will allow parents to kind of make a judgment call as to, whether or not a child is mentally, physically, developmentally ready to do different tasks, out in public by themselves. So it will kind of prevent parents from being subject to prosecution like they might have been in the past, and will allow, children to have the experience of going out and doing things independently, like riding a bike around the block, walking their dog, things that historically were very normal activities that, in recent decades have become more and more subject to scrutiny.
Yeah, it's so funny. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine this morning, and, it used to be during the summer especially, I'd leave at 8 o'clock in the morning on my bike with a basketball under one arm, a mitt under the other, and if I came back at 6 o'clock, that was a really good day. And
Right.
And so tell us just a little bit in terms of what we're seeing. You had some really fascinating components to all of this. One is that this actually has become something that is bipartisan that we've been hoping for. Tell us how both sides are coming together and why they're coming together to make sure parents are protected this way.
Yeah, well, that was one of the most interesting components to me, right, is that it's something that people on all sides of the political aisle can get behind, which is, greater childhood independence. And because it is better for our children, and it, in theory, makes them less anxious and better prepared to deal with life. So on the kind of left side of the aisle, you see that, Democrats and those who are aligned, with the Democrats support some of these measures because they have found that children who come from impoverished backgrounds, poor families, are more likely to be penalized for giving their children freedom. So that's kind of the left wing kind of approach, I guess, to this idea. And then the right, I think that this would come under that umbrella of, parents' rights, that parents get to make the decision about what's best for their child and that the state is not making the decision for them. So there is, of course, some irony in the fact that, these are pieces of legislation that are saying to the state to kind of back off of it, right? It comes from the state, but it's to take the reins off a little bit of the state, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to dig into that area because we talk about, kids that are walking by themselves to school or that are jumping on a train or a subway. And you pointed this out, and I think this is so important that many of those families in poverty are really kind of getting the double whammy there because they have two parents that are working, or there's a single mom that's working, and so that 5 or 6 or 7-year-old has to walk to school alone, and then they're often being targeted as being neglectful while not having access to the resources. What do we learn from that, and how do we kind of shift the dynamic in that space?
Right. Well, but I think, part of that, though, is also that walking to school alone at 5 or whatever used to be a very normal activity, right? And so as these activities have become kind of made strange or not normal in this culture of helicopter parenting, it is low-income families who have just disproportionately paid the price because they have less resources, they have less help, and then they're penalized for doing the things that in the past were normal. That sometimes they're just facts of life that, like, a child has to get to school, a parent can't drive them or walk with them. I used to walk to school from the age of 10 on, that was growing up in Gainesville, Florida, and it was fine. That's why crossing guards exist, right?
Right.
Is to help kids cross. It's not to help parents and kids cross. So, so it's, poor families need more support, but and they also need to be penalized less, I guess, is kind of the takeaway from some of this as well.
So I want to get into some of the things that you mentioned, Maya, in terms of the mental health of our young people and what they actually do learn by becoming independent. We know in terms of the legislative side, Utah, of course, back in 2018 had a free-range parenting law. But give us some of the results in terms of how does having this proper independence, not neglect, not just letting kids run wild, but how does that actually help our kids, and how do we actually support that?
Well, it's really interesting because with the rise of helicopter parenting has also come a rise in, children struggling with different mental health conditions, including anxiety. And there's this professor, a clinical psychologist at Long Island University, Camila Ortez, who, is doing some different work on children's anxiety. And rather than having children face specific fears, head on, doing a kind of systematic desensitization, as it would be known in psychology, he just has kids do things alone. And he told a California radio station, I thought it was a fantastic line. He said, "This isn't a traditional anxiety treatment." He said, "My approach is something like, so you're afraid of the dark? Go to the deli and buy me some salami." So it's this idea that, like, maybe you don't have to tackle the fear of the dark, by walking through that process of envisioning the dark and then being in the dark, which is the traditional kind of systematic desensitization. It's part of a broader kind of, patchwork quilt of anxieties that come from not doing things alone. So maybe the best way to get a child to be less fearful of the dark is by, having them walk, to the grocery store and do some grocery shopping on their own. I think it's genius, and I think it points to, a big problem in our culture today that we do everything with our children and for our children, and so they don't develop that confidence, right, in being able to do things by themselves.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, I may send a memo to Congress and say, since you can't get you're afraid of getting anything done, so go buy me some salami. on the corner deli.
Right.
We'll send the entire Congress together. Maybe they can even hold hands and buy us a sandwich. All right, real quick, Maya, before I let you go, anything else surprise you in this? This is such a great in-depth piece and so many really fascinating angles to it. Anything surprise you as you went through this process?
The question that I posed to everyone I spoke to is, is it the culture that's driving the legislation or the legislation that's driving the culture? So, has helicopter parenting arisen because of, changes in policy and law, or is it that the changes in policy and law reflect, changes in the culture? And I think what was interesting in researching this article is that it's been a bit of both, right? As the culture has kind of shifted towards this helicopter parenting, you've also seen changes in policies like, that Amtrak used to let children 8 and older travel by themselves, and now the age is 13. And as policies have changed, it has also reinforced helicopter parenting. So, changing these laws, and these are state laws, right, that, assert parents' rights is a way of kind of starting to reshape the culture, and push back on that. So I think that dynamic is always worth thinking about, and not just in this arena, but in lots of different arenas of American life.
So good. Maya Jaredot from the Deseret News. Thanks so much for joining us today. That wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour: people heading to national parks in southern Utah and other recreation areas are facing a risk of flash flooding. Officials say flooding is possible at Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef. National Weather Service meteorologist Michael Wessler says it doesn't have to be raining right where you are for there to be a flash flood risk.
You may not see these showers or thunderstorms overhead that have the potential to cause flash flooding. They could be miles away from you at the head of the basin, and that water is going to come cascading down.
And Wessler tells KSL at night people wanting to explore these areas should be proactive, get the forecast, and make responsible decisions based on that. With rising temperatures in the triple digits, Utah's also seeing an increase of burns and heat stroke with pets. Dr. Samuel Rivera with the Utah Veterinary Hospital has treated cases this summer, offers advice to pet owners on those very hot days.
So I wouldn't recommend walking our pets outside on the hot asphalt during the afternoon hours or even to the early evening hours without the dogs wearing booties or coverings on their feet.
Dr. Rivera says if you feel the ground's too hot to touch, it's too hot for furry friends. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: Sinead O'Connor, the Irish singer whose music put her at the top of the charts in the 1980s and 90s, has passed away at the age of 56. The Irish Times says her family issued a statement confirming her death. O'Connor converted to Islam in 2018 and took the name Shahada Sadiqat, although she continued to perform as Sinead O'Connor. Your money at this moment, near the close of trading, the Dow bounced up again and was up 84 points just a minute or two ago. The NASDAQ, though, down on the day about 17 points. And our KSL weather, we've had a thunderstorm in downtown Salt Lake. Bit of a shower, that's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
Back in the day, a shoemaker was called a cobbler because the stone you walked on was called cobblestone. Or was it the other way around? But before you can walk on cobblestone, you have to lay it down. Of course, you can also use cobblestone in your garden or park strips, or, well, you get the idea. But where do you get good old-fashioned cobblestone? The dirt bag. Imagine the things you can do with it in your yard and garden. If you have an imagination, the dirt bag has what you need to bring that dream to life. Rock mulch? How about 11 different rock mulches? Playground chips for the kids? Yep, the dirt bag. For topsoil, sod, bark mulches, and pathway material called chat, the dirt bag. And with a dirt bag, your garden and yard you have in your imagination can be delivered right to your driveway. Or you can pick it up in bulk yourself. There's a reason everyone loves the dirt bag. Find out what the dirt bag can do for you at thedirtbag.com. Thedirtbag.com.
Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago? You looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Ah, the joy of taxes. It could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Mike Stevens and the team at Capital Wealth Advisors can help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up your tax strategy session with Mike Stevens and Capital Wealth Advisors now. Call 801-210-5500. That's 801-210-5500. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 801-210-5500. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor. Firm may not give tax advice.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
Delays continue eastbound on I-84 as you're passing Highway 89. Going towards Mountain Green. Not really sure what's been causing those delays, but it's been really backed up. We have a KSL traffic trooper reporting a lot of standing water on Bangerter Highway between 9800 and 114th South. Another traffic trooper reporting hail in the Sugar House area and some slowing likely due to the weather northbound I-15 going from Murray into South Salt Lake. Pioneer Day savings with the pioneers of no residue carpet cleaning. Only $25 per room. Minimums apply. You don't have to clean today, but you do have to schedule online at zerores.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather. The rain we've had hasn't cooled things off much. Still 92 degrees right now, and a possible high around 99 today. Thunder showers possible again this afternoon, and highs will climb back above 100 by Friday and Saturday. We've got some light rain in Salt Lake City right now at KSL News Radio. 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The headlines today everywhere on the news have been all Hunter Biden all the time. Of course, he is the president's son. He was in court today, and the judge refused to sign a plea deal agreed to by Hunter Biden and the prosecutors. He's being charged with 2 misdemeanor tax crimes, 1 felony gun possession count. Extremely rare that a plea deal in such a high-profile case falls apart like this. So we want to look at what's going on. What's happening with the president's son? Who knew what, when, where, and does anybody really know anything? And is anyone really willing to admit that they just don't know? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
So we want to look at all the angles of what's going on in the Hunter Biden case. And again, set your politics aside for a moment. I know that's a very hard thing to do, but just do it. Try it. You might like it. Because we have to get past this instant certainty where you either have to defend or attack based on red, blue, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. That's not how this is supposed to happen anyway. These are legal issues. And this is a human being, by the way, as well. Also should be factored in. This is also a family, by the way, who happens to be in the public. All of those things need to be factored in our instant certainty, our rush to judgment, our rush to either defend or attack often prevents us from getting to the conversation. So let's go through a few of the pieces that we know. During today's White House press briefing, Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre gave this statement about Hunter Biden's day in court.
Hunter Biden is a private citizen, and this was a personal matter for him. As we have said, the president, the first lady, they love their son, and they support him as he continues to rebuild his life. This case was handled independently, as all of you know, by the Justice Department under the leadership of a prosecutor appointed by the former president. So for anything further, I'd refer you to the Department of Justice and to Hunter's representatives, who is his legal team, obviously, who can address any of your questions.
Okay, so that's the statement coming out of the White House press briefing room today from Karine Jean-Pierre, just saying, look, this is private citizen, personal matter. Parents who happen to be the president and the first lady love him, support him as he tries to rebuild his life. Obviously, his drug addiction was a big part of all of this. Really interesting as you move through this. Chris Christie pointed out something really interesting. He's a former prosecutor. He gets the drill. He knows what this is all about. But he did point out something that's kind of ironic. He pointed out the hypocrisy of the president's son getting away with a gun charge when the president and Democrats have been advocating so long to have tighter, tougher penalties for these gun laws.
This is a case where Democrats yell and scream for more new gun laws in the country, yet you hear no Democrat yelling about the fact that Hunter Biden intentionally lied on his gun permit application, mishandled the gun after he received it with a false permit application, and faces absolutely no penalty. Guess what? The guy who sponsored that law was his father, Senator Joe Biden, and that charge carries a 10-year sentence, Margaret. They need to explain to the public.
So I want to stay with that for a second. I think this is a really interesting conundrum for the president and for Democrats in relationship to all of this. Today on MSNBC, Chris Christie was talking about the same thing, why the charge was dismissed when obviously there's nothing to be gained by doing it that way.
You know, if you dismiss that gun charge, what are you getting in return for that as the government? I wouldn't just give that away if I were the prosecutor. You can trade that away if you want, but you better get something in return. And I think what the judge is looking at probably here is she's saying, well, wait a second. If you're doing this and you're still investigating other things that may wind up coming back to Hunter Biden or start with Hunter Biden and go other places, how am I supposed to approve this plea deal?
And I think that's where we are today, that the judge just couldn't get over the hump on this one in terms of approving the deal. There were also a lot of flurry of activity today talking about what it was, and did the plea deal really mean that everything was done for Hunter Biden? Did it really close it? And it turned out to be no. There's still more things that are being investigated. And obviously that becomes very complicated, very problematic. Again, Chris Christie with Andrea Mitchell on MSNBC today explained why he didn't think the judge was going to approve it to begin with.
I just don't believe the judge is going to approve this plea deal in the way it's been laid out for a few reasons. One, because, you get 2 misdemeanor tax counts after a 5-year investigation. Secondly, you dismiss a gun charge that has a 10-year mandatory minimum. And 3, you say the investigation is still ongoing. Like, how do you square those things? Usually when someone pleads, it's over, and the plea wraps up all parts of any investigation that you have into that particular person.
So, again, just a lot of uncertainty in terms of what is actually going on, what the deal actually was or was not, and what it means moving forward. It's not to say, again, we don't know. I'm happy to say that today. There's so many things in this that we simply do not know. And we have to be willing to say, I don't know. And so it is possible the judge could come back a week from now, a month from now, and accept some sort of plea deal. Could be the same plea deal. But the judge clearly had more questions that the judge was simply not satisfied with. I want to get one last piece from Chris Christie. I thought he was very articulate in this. Obviously, he has a lot of experience of this in New Jersey. He talked about the fact that maybe this decision to keep investigating didn't come from the federal prosecutor, but was coming from someone a little higher up.
From the beginning, I was concerned about the way they investigated this case. Were they being transparent about what else they were looking at? Was U.S. Attorney Weiss being candid about the authority he had? Because now it looks like he didn't have the authority, right? I mean, if in fact the investigation is still ongoing, is the same guy who said that he was agreeing to the plea deal, U.S. Attorney Weiss, also saying, well, no, it's not all done? Or did someone above him tell him it wasn't all done? To say that and to also agree to a deal, was he signaling that he wasn't happy about this and that it was being imposed upon him? Because to put that in, the two things were contradictory in my experience.
So as we look at all of this, here's what I want us to be thinking about as this plays out. And this is not over by a long shot. And there's going to be political reaction from the right, who will amp up committee hearings, investigations, impeachment threats. They'll be ramping this up from the left, saying this is a witch hunt and this is all politically motivated, rolling into 2024 to try to undermine the president. All of that is going to happen. But we have to get beyond all of that because, again, we don't know. We don't know. Is this the unraveling and the beginning of an impeachment of the president? I don't know. I don't think so. But we don't know that for sure. It could rise, and so the question will be, what did President Biden know and when, and all of those kinds of things. We also have an individual who's working his way back from a life and a lifestyle that was reckless, that was full of lies and deceit, and that's all real. And then there's this family component to it all. And this is not the first child, presidential child, that's had problems. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Madison. Dolly Madison's son, Todd Madison, was constantly going crosswise with law. Roosevelt, daughter, Alice, led the president, Roosevelt, to say, look, I can either be president of the United States or I can control Alice Roosevelt, but I cannot do both. And so families are messy. Families are challenging, and we have other family members from Republicans and Democrats alike that have caused problems for the person sitting in the Oval Office or the first family in general, and that happens. It's just part of the deal. And so there's a lot of complexities to all of that, and I think the best thing we can all do is suspend judgment. I think it's imperative for the Department of Justice to do their work, to be as transparent as possible, as rapidly as possible. I think if the House is going to do things in terms of hearings and investigations, that also needs to be done rapidly, transparently, so that we can move everything forward. But the thing that we don't need is instant certainty. Because remember, instant certainty is the enemy of truth, and it undermines trust. And if we can't get to that, then all we have is a big mess. We have a lot of division and derision, and none of that moves us forward. So let's have a different kind of conversation when it comes to the first family and what this all means moving forward.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. In a world where actors Pickett and writers won't write, two heroes emerge. The apprentice, Andy Farnsworth. Hello. And the master, Steve Sales. Get new t-shirts. Are on a mission to find you something, anything to watch. The Movie Show. Fridays 9 to noon on KSL News Radio. This show is rated PG for pretty good.
When it comes to your weight loss goals, getting healthy and strong, don't do it alone. Soda Weight Loss is there to help you every step of the way. It's Soda Weight Loss. SOTA stands for state-of-the-art weight loss because it is. And it is a all points of the compass approach. They're going to attack your mental, emotional habits, as well as the things that you need to make sure your body's getting the right fuel, the right nutrition to really thrive and succeed. I lost 37 pounds in just 90 days. I'm almost 20 months into the program. I'm right where I want to be. 37 pounds down, feel better, have more energy. It's so nice when you can click that belt over a couple of notches. You feel better because it's all there with Soda Weight Loss. And I'm not the only one. There's thousands of people across the country who have done the same thing. You've got your own coach and nutritionist to help you stay on path and to get where you really want to go. Don't do it alone. As I always say, when it comes to your Soda Weight Loss journey, no time to lose, only time to win. So start winning today with weight loss. Do it with Soda Weight Loss, SOTAweightloss.com.
Summer is upon us, and do you know what your lawn wants? It wants Revive Organic Soil Treatment upon it. A Revive treatment with fertilization, aeration, and good watering is the key to building stronger roots for a healthy, lush green lawn all summer. Revive fertilizes and moves water and nutrients deeper into the soil. You'll see the difference. Revive is surefire defense against summer drought and skyrocketing water costs. Make the most of your watering with Revive Organic Soil Treatment. Apply Revive Organic Soil Treatment today. it works.
At Fisher Investments, our clients know we have their backs.
How do your clients know that?
Because Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, the highest standard for a financial advisor. It means we're there for our clients and always put their interests first.
So wait, you do it because you have to?
No, we do it because it's the right thing to do. Our clients trust us with their retirement savings, and we know how important that responsibility is. So we take the time to really get to know them.
Get to know them how?
We make sure we understand their unique goals, finances, health, family, and lifestyle so we can tailor their portfolio to their specific needs. Our goal is to help them achieve a comfortable retirement.
Sounds like a big responsibility. You must make big commissions then, right?
No, we don't sell commission-based products. We have one single transparent fee that's structured so we do better when our clients do better. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you are switching to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly different money management.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Mountain Star Healthcare's Harriman Emergency Center is now open. Be seen fast at the Harriman ER located just off Mountain View Corridor and 134th South in Harriman.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me. And believe it or not, they really do make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for talking and preparing me for what's ahead.
Thank you for talking.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, along with thunderstorms on the Wasatch Front, there's a risk of storms and flash flooding in southern Utah this afternoon. Second, vets say they've seen a lot of dogs injured by walking on hot pavement the past few days. And third, Sinead O'Connor has passed away at the age of 56. She became famous for her controversial views as well as her music. Right now, 92 degrees, light rain in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Over the last year, Russia, China, and Iran have all been escalating conflicts of various sources in various ways, creating all kinds of problems for the United States and for allies around the world. As we start to look at the Biden administration's track record and really being able to discern kind of the model that they're operating on when it comes to foreign relations and foreign interactions, there are some really interesting trends beginning to emerge. And the question often comes back to this idea of, is it the peacekeeper, which is sort of avoiding conflict, always trying to scale things down, or is it peacemaker, where you're actually leaning into the principles that while they may escalate a few things, they also might lead to a strength and some lasting peace in the process. Mike Mazza is the non-resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he analyzes U.S. defense policy in the Asia-Pacific area. A great piece in National Review talking about the Biden administration's foreign policy. And Mike, welcome back to the show. And I want to start with just kind of this high-level thing. I love this piece in terms of looking at both a principle, some policies, and then some very specific applications when it comes to Russia, China, and Iran. So give us the high level first. What is it that you're seeing? What are you discerning when it comes to how they're really approaching foreign policy in the administration?
My co-author, Shea Kateri, and I, when we look back at the past couple of years of the way the Biden administration has approached relations with the countries you named, Russia, China, and Iran, and when we look at the way it's responded to, a series of actions that they've taken, it seems to us that the Biden administration's overriding concern is to avoid escalation, to avoid tensions getting worse, to avoid risking armed confrontation.
Yeah.
And, obviously we want to try to avoid armed confrontation. That's not a political objective for the United States. But the political objective here seems to be a very negative one. And what I mean by that is we're not trying to positively shape the world we're living in. We're not trying to achieve foreign policy goals that, in theory we've set out for ourselves. We're just trying to avoid problems.
Yeah, and if you're always in that reactionary state as opposed to, I love the way you frame that, shaping shaping what that should look like and be like. And let's start with Russia as an example. You used this in your piece with your colleague, talking about this idea that they have pursued, the administration has pursued, in terms of strategic stability. Kind of describe that and why that necessarily hasn't been a good path to lasting peace.
Yeah, so very, very early in the Biden administration, the United States sat down with Russia, and there was this, both countries agreed to the pursuit of strategic stability. That's fine as far as it goes, but of course Russia turned around and the next year launched this major invasion of Ukraine. Right? It's now the biggest land war on the European continent since World War II. To the Biden administration's credit, it has done a lot in order to support Ukraine, sent Ukraine all sorts of weapon systems and ammunition in order to fight the war, provided intelligence assistance. Again, that's all positive. But running throughout the response is this urgent desire on the part of the Biden administration to avoid the conflict escalating into a war between Russia and NATO. And to be sure, that is something to be avoided. But the risk there, we would argue, is actually quite low and has been low in the past year and a half. And so because of this concern the Biden administration has that is somehow going to happen, right, that we're going to end up at war with Russia, we're not doing the sorts of things we should be doing to help bring this war to an end, and an end that results in Ukrainian victory and Russian defeat.
Yeah, I thought that was really important in your piece, just talking about the fact that the administration seems to have been slow, often in the name of we don't want to escalate things, or we don't want to be at war with Russia. Again, that's a good, noble cause for sure. We don't want that. But often this doing it so slow in a fear of ratcheting up, I think has actually caused things to ratchet up more. And as you said, we're now well over a year and a half into this, and not a lot of a great end in sight. Anything you're seeing on the horizon that might shift that or change that dynamic as it relates to Russia? And then we'll move on to China.
Again, to the administration's credit, I think it has slowly come to grips with the fact that it has been wrong in its risk assessments, right? So we do see this this approach in which the United States says no to the Ukrainians, and then the fourth or fifth time they ask for something, the Biden administration realizes, hey, this is not actually going to cause a big problem. So yes, you can have whatever the current weapon system we're talking about is. So that's positive that they seem to be learning from their mistakes. But my argument would be that the Biden administration is simply learning too slow and remains overly cautious. Again, there's the Biden administration and the president himself are very good about saying that the United States is going to stay with Ukraine as long as it takes. Mm-hmm. But we don't like to say we're doing this in order to bring about Ukrainian victory. Yeah. Right? So there's this caution that the administration just can't get past.
Yeah, that speed issue seems to be that ability to take on new information. We always talk about the OODA loop in terms of observe, orient, decide, act, and moving that over quickly is the real key in any kind of battle that way. Talk to us for a minute about how this same principle applies to how we're approaching policy as it relates to China.
Yeah, so the Biden administration, came into office and essentially said we're going to maintain the Trump administration's approach of competing with China, right? Understanding this relationship with China as one in which we are engaged in a competition. And again, I would argue that's a positive. But since very early in the administration, the president and other officials have been talking about placing guardrails on the relationship, making sure that the competition doesn't tip over into conflict. And again, the desire to avoid conflict is obviously admirable, but the outcome is that they are putting avoiding escalation ahead of winning the competition, right? And if they're framing the U.S.-China relationship as a competition, presumably they want to win that competition. Now, we can disagree and argue about what exactly that looks like, but what it has meant in practice is that the United States has shied away from taking, what I think would be really important steps to put China on its back foot, and that those steps could be taken without the significant risk of escalation that the Biden administration seems to think exists.
Yeah, and I think the way you closed out your piece, this is so important for our listeners, that you said that the escalation management is a strategic objective that should serve a political end, but the United States is ceding ground because the Biden administration has made escalation management in the administration the supreme political end. Just give us a 30-second snapshot of that and why we should be thinking about what we should be watching for in that space.
Yeah, the problem with the problem with telegraphing that your primary concern, virtually above all else, is avoiding escalation, means that your rivals, your adversaries, get to pick the time, pick and choose the time that they want to escalate. They get to pick the location that they want to escalate, and because they know the administration fears escalation, they're willing to be aggressive, knowing that our instinct, or this administration's instinct, will be to act with restraint.
Absolutely. Great insight. This is a fabulous piece, and this really opened my eyes on a couple of things. Like, oh, that makes sense as to why they're doing some of those things. And in the end, I think it is leading us to a space not of functioning from a position of strength, but always seeking for that de-escalation when the real path might be leaning in and really going a little bit stronger. Michael Maz is the non-resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Great piece. You should check that out today. Mike, thanks so much for weighing in today.
Thanks for having me.
I think that was such an important conversation with Mike, that if you look at everything being a need to de-escalate, that is the fastest path to escalate. And by avoiding it, you're actually not solving it. And in many cases, you're allowing your adversaries to dictate the terms, to ratchet things up when it's convenient for them to function in a position of strength, and for us to be in a position of weakness. That's not helpful for U.S. foreign policy. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. Don't go anywhere, though. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the Federal Trade Commission and what might be on the horizon as it relates to Amazon. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour: more than 450 children in Utah spent at least one night in a homeless shelter last month. KSL News Radio's Kate Davis has those numbers come from a new report.
That's according to new data tracking homelessness in the state. The numbers are even higher for seniors living on the streets. Crossroads Urban Center says 597 people older than 55 spent at least one night in a shelter in June. That's actually an improvement. The center says the number of seniors experiencing homelessness has dropped by a lot over the last 2 months. That's thanks to a new facility for seniors and veterans in Salt Lake County. Kate Davis, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story this hour: extreme heat in Arizona has the city of Phoenix utilizing a cooling center on wheels. ABC's Alex Stone reports.
It may sound and look just like any city bus, but this one is a cooling center, an idea by the city of Phoenix to bring a cooling center to the people who need it most, near a homeless shelter. The bus parks from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. with the air conditioning on full and bottles of water available. Michelle Lidwin is with the city's Office of Heat Mitigation.
It's really just providing a safe, cool space for people to get some respite during the hottest periods of the day.
It comes as the Phoenix area reports 7 more deaths related to heat, with 249 additional deaths being investigated by the coroner. Alex Stone, EBC News.
Your money at this moment. At the close of trading, the Dow Jones average was up 82 points today. The NASDAQ, though, down 17. And the S&P 500 about even 0.7 of 1 point. And our KSL weather, still hot, but we did get a thunderstorm coming through. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the economy the way it is, you're probably staying put. So invest in your home, your number one asset, with beautiful custom replacement windows from Advanced Window Products. They're a local Utah company building beautiful vinyl framed and insulated double pane windows for 37 years right here in Salt Lake City. Advanced Window Products will save you money on your energy bill. Get security features to keep your family safe. And at Advanced Window Products, it's all custom. And the best part? They're local. They build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. You save on the highest quality windows in Utah. Plus, Rocky Mountain and Dominion offer rebates. For a limited time, they offer 60-month 0% financing. And right now, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more. They're working 8 weeks out. So make the call now. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
You ever notice when someone takes a sip out of a water bottle and they find it to be really good, they always seem to look at the label. Folks just can't help themselves when they take a sip out of a Little Spring water bottle. Well, there's a reason it's called Nature in a Bottle. No chemicals, no additives. It's just pure, clean, healthy water from a family-owned and operated bottled water company where that Little Spring is nestled in a beautiful canyon in Bear Lake, Utah. Now, just imagine the reaction from your customers if your logo was on that recyclable bottle of pure goodness. In the advertising world, they call those impressions. Of course, when you drink Little Spring water, you'll just call it impressive. Let Little Spring water put your company logo on a bottle and watch what happens. Just visit littlespringwater.com to get a quote. It's actually quite reasonable. littlespringwater.com.
Smart, connected, modern. Discover life-enhancing independent living services at Trio South Ogden. They do things a little differently there because you're different. With everything you need to support your best self, you'll find that joy isn't just for the young, it's for the young of heart. Trio South Ogden's signature programs provide a unique approach to wellness that brings living well and well-being to life. To learn more, contact Trio South Ogden at 801-475-4004 or visit triosouthodden.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's high-yield savings certificates. Here's Ricky Meese.
A lot of areas of freeway traffic are recovering from the rain that came through the valley and really slowed speeds. And we also have traffic getting back to a good pace eastbound I-84 as we had delays in the South Weber area passing the Highway 89 junction. We have a crash in the cleanup stages, a rollover. This is westbound I-80 on the ramp to southbound Bangerter Highway. A couple of crashes in Salt Lake City, one downtown at Main Street and 6 South, the other one at 5th South at about 1350 East. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, that chance of thunder showers is right on top of us at the moment. Highs today will reach about 99 by the time it's all over. But currently the rain has cooled things off a little bit. We've got 88 degrees with some light rain at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Federal Trade Commission is readying a lawsuit against Amazon that has the potential to break up the company. And while all the details of the antitrust suit are not fully known, we do know that it's likely to focus on issues with Amazon Prime. So what are the potential claims? Should parts of Amazon be broken up? What would the impact of that be? Really pleased to have Sal Nuzzo, who serves as the Senior Vice President for the James Madison Institute, on the line with us. And Sal, as you've looked at this, obviously everyone has kind of been waiting for the shoe to drop on this, and we know sometimes this becomes 11th hour stuff. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you sensing?
Good afternoon, Boyd, and thank you so much for having me. Honestly, this kind of harkens me back, and I may be dating myself to a time when the FTC was going after Microsoft so long ago.
Yeah.
And there's a number of parallels, I think, that we're beginning to see kind of come forth. And much of the contention on the part of the FTC is basically nothing other than Amazon has gotten too big for its britches. And so whenever we have seen kind of the case of whether it's Microsoft or another or Meta, Facebook, or something like what's happening here with Amazon, you see kind of the leftward-leaning group of bureaucrats in the Federal Trade Commission are deciding that their biggest concern is the fact that Amazon is, in their minds, so big that it could exert anti-competitive mechanisms at play. And they're trying to tie that to its Prime subscription service. And so there's going to be a number of nuances to this, but at its core, like I said, I'm seeing a whole lot of parallels with what the government tried to do to Microsoft a long time back.
Yeah, and that whole idea of too big, too strong, too powerful is always an interesting thing to kind of dig into. We know part of that probe, there were lots of interviews inside and outside of Amazon, including some interesting ones. CEO Andy Jassy and, of course, former CEO and founder Jeff Bezos also part of that. Anything you're hearing from what that interview or what those interviews looked like or sounded like, and how that's likely to factor in?
Very little, and it's a lot of speculation. The one thing I would contend is that it looks like the FTC is going to kind of release the entirety of their claims in the next several weeks. And I would be on the lookout for just in what they're contending on how Amazon is using Amazon Prime in terms of how it charges, how it keeps people on the subscription service, and then how it uses Prime to increase its market share over the Amazon retail side of things. And so those are some of the elements of it that I think, but right now there's going to be a whole lot of speculation and gossip, and we try to wait until the actual kind of words on the paper come out when they do.
And we applaud that. We avoid the instant certainty game on things that we don't know yet regularly on this program, and so we appreciate the restraint. Restraint always works. We appreciate that. And so you should look at this, and it's important for our listeners to get the perspective that this is actually something that began under the Trump administration.
Yes, and there's been kind of a love-hate relationship on both the Republican and Democrat administrations with whether you want to call them large technology companies or big tech, and really the influence that they exert over the marketplace. And so that's a debate that organizations like ours, and we focus on the principles of free market economies and how they kind of promote the greatest level of prosperity. We do believe that at some level, companies who exert threatening or anti-competitive behavior where they're throttling their competitors should be put on notice. With that being said, Amazon has created more small businesses and small business millionaires than any other company that we've been able to identify in the history of the United States. And so that's kind of the lens that we're seeing, but you're absolutely correct. Both Republicans and Democrats, and we know that in the federal government, the swamp wants to have the highest degree of power. So whenever a company threatens to, have enough power that they control market share, the federal government is going to look at that with a, kind of with a wearing eye.
Yeah, I want to go back to the point you just made there, Sal, because I think this is so important. Everybody says, okay, well, they're so big, they're so powerful, they're killing off all the competition, and yet there's this downstream impact in terms of creating other businesses that are thriving, succeeding, really becoming phenomenal success stories because of Amazon. What do we anticipate in terms of that ripple effect should some of the things that we're hearing about to actually play out?
It is an excellent point, and a couple things that I think are worth noting on this. One is, like you said, the downstream effects. Amazon is one of the only retailers that I know of that sell their competitors' products on their own site. This would be akin to you walking into Target and them selling Walmart items, Walmart branded items on it. It's unheard of. And yet Amazon, because they recognize the kind of economies of scale and the way that they've been able to grow over the years, has embraced this form of kind of creative destruction. So if you take this down to the policy level, and let's just say that years down the road, the federal government is able to do what it is that Chair Khan wants to do and break up Amazon, you would likely see downstream negative impacts on all of those small businesses, because they would likely face a very, very different landscape competitively in their ability to use Amazon to sell their wares than they are using currently.
Yeah, and I think this is another one of those where we have to be careful with the government taking the big axe or the big hammer to something, because often they think they're doing one thing, but the net result of that can be a negative impact, and often it's the little guy that gets hurt. So we say we're going after the big guy, but in reality, we end up hurting the very people we say we're trying to help in terms of the little guy.
Absolutely. And to bring it back to the Microsoft case from back in the early to mid-'90s, by the time that the litigation had wound its way ahead and the ruling came down and then it got litigated, by the time it was concluded, the entire technological landscape over internet service providers had completely changed. So the results of that were completely null and void. The same is likely to be true here. If the FTC moves forward and they are successful and it's litigated, by the time there's any kind of a conclusion to this, the online retail marketplace would likely be so different, the results of it wouldn't even matter, in my estimation.
Wow, that is great insight right there. Sal Nuzzo, Senior Vice President for the James Madison Institute. Sal, thanks for breaking that down for us. Fantastic perspective. We look forward to having you back as we can continue the journey on this one.
Anytime at all. Just let me know.
All right. Again, that's Sal Nuzzo from the James Madison Institute. Again, a lot of times we say, hey, we gotta protect the little guy. We got to take out the big guy. And often in that very process, we actually squash the little guy. So you got to be careful. Unintended consequences are a real thing when it comes to this kind of policy and this kind of swing from the administrative state. We got to keep our eye on that one when it relates to Amazon. We'll be back. Final segment coming up.
At Fisher Investments, we do things differently, and other money managers don't understand why.
Because our way works great for us.
But it may not work for your clients. That's why Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, obligated to put clients first. It's the highest standard for a financial advisor.
So, what do you provide? Cookie-cutter portfolios like the rest of us?
No cookie-cutter portfolios here. Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to meet each client's goals and needs.
But you do sell investments that earn you high commissions, right? And make commissions when you make trades for your clients?
No, Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission investment products, and we never earn commissions on trades.
So what's in it for you?
Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when our clients do better. When it comes to helping clients achieve a comfortable retirement, we're clearly different. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments, clearly different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Let's cut to the chase. $25 per room for the best no residue carpet cleaning. Zero Res pioneered the no residue difference, and to celebrate Pioneer Day, Zero Res will clean your carpets for just $25 per room. Other companies say they clean as good as Zero Res, but it's just not the same. Zero Res has patented technology to ensure you get the best cleaning possible, and yes, those patents mean that no one else is cleaning like this. Celebrate Pioneer Day with the pioneers of no residue cleaning, Zero Res carpet and air duct cleaning. Today and tomorrow only, they are cleaning the Wasatch Front for just $25 per room. Minimums and restrictions apply, but there are no maximums. Clean 5 rooms, 6 rooms, clean the whole house. Just $25 per room. You don't have to clean today, but you do have to get on the schedule. $25 per room, Pioneer Day savings ends on the 27th. Schedule today, visit ZeroRes.com. That's ZeroRez.com.
When you choose Performance Automotive in Bountiful, you're choosing selection, convenience, and exceptional service. 4 locations: Performance Ford Lincoln, Performance Honda, Performance Toyota, and Ford Truck Country. all dedicated to delivering you the best auto experience anywhere. Looking for your first car? Maybe you want rugged power or the stylish ride of your dreams. New or used. See it all at PerformanceBountiful.com. PerformanceBountiful.com.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Get Mr. Max Performance Missionary Package. 1 performance suit, 4 and collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, and 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes. Just $595.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Dave and Dujanovic.
We can have disagreements and still be friends. So often, I think people think that just because we disagree, that we're enemies. That we are not. We're great friends, even though we disagree.
I hope listeners take away something new every day, a new detail they hadn't heard before. And I also hope our show opens their minds to new ideas, new ways of thinking of things.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a new report putting some numbers on children and elderly people staying in homeless resource centers in Salt Lake City. Second, a website that gives parents the idea they're signing up for the state's private school scholarship program actually has no connection to state government. And third, there's a city bus in Phoenix that's going nowhere, but it's cool inside, giving people in that city with nowhere to go a break from the heat. 88 degrees with some light rain in Salt Lake City right now. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson, and as we round out the program today, I really want to bring it full circle. We started the show today talking about the kerfuffle around curriculum in the state of Florida. And not that we need to weigh into the weeds in terms of what's happening in the state of Florida, but it's the principle behind it all that we all should be aware of. And the principle is instant certainty. And when we are instantly certain, we stop listening, we stop being curious, we stop asking questions, we don't explore, we don't test, we don't validate or verify. And we just have to remember that instant certainty is the enemy of truth. It undermines trust, and it is a driver of divisiveness. And so as it relates to the Florida curriculum, as it relates to the history of slavery in this country, we had a really interesting series of instantly certain moments when somebody said that the curriculum stated that the curriculum was going to teach that slaves benefited from being slaves, which of course is absolutely ludicrous. Instantly certain, the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, went to Florida to blast Governor DeSantis for having such a preposterous thing in the curriculum. The only problem is that it's not in the curriculum. Not to be outdone, and equally certain, Governor DeSantis made it even worse by first trying to explain it when he hadn't really looked at it either, then to shrug his shoulders and say, well, I wasn't involved, it was someone else, and then to point fingers and place blame and say, well, if you have a problem with it, you should go talk to the people who did it. That's not what leadership looks like. So I think both the vice president and the governor of the state of Florida chose to be instantly certain and advance a political message and dialogue rather than getting to the facts of what's actually in the curriculum. So here's a radical thing. Let's listen to somebody who was leading the curriculum. Dr. William Allen. He is a Black American. He's former chairman of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. He's now a member of Florida's African American History Standards Work Group, which created the curriculum. He really called out both the vice president and the governor for not asking or understanding what's in the curriculum. More importantly, he also pointed out the fact that there are important things in this curriculum that everyone, not just the kids in the state of Florida, but every American should be thinking about as it relates to how we look at history. And all of this was completely lost because of the anger, fear, frustration, fake fight that the vice president and the governor of Florida were doing for political purposes. So I want you to listen to Dr. Allen as he talked about people like Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, and that we need to allow in history those people to actually speak for themselves.
Booker T. Washington titled his autobiography, Up From Slavery. That's his story, not our story. He told it. Frederick Douglass told the story of the mistress of his slave master teaching him to read, beginning that until she was shut down by the slave master. She pulled back the curtain just a bit so a beam of light shone through. And that was enough for him to take that beam and turn it through his own efforts into a flame of illumination that benefited him and his country. And these stories are legend. The people who lived the histories told the stories. The curriculum is about allowing the people who live the histories to speak in their own names for themselves, to tell their own stories.
There are so many things from history that get hijacked for political purposes. Instant certainty of what this motive was or what that motive was or why this Supreme Court justice did this or this president did that. Again, often instantly certain by some expert or someone with an agenda that, again, prevents us from actually getting to the truth. So I love this idea of letting those from history, especially those who wrote about it and told their own story, we should listen to them and let them speak for themselves to tell their own stories. They're their stories, not ours. But instant certainty prevents that kind of conversation from ever happening. Now, this is not the only place we've been watching and witnessing instant certainty today. Wall-to-wall coverage on the national cable news today about Hunter Biden and the fact that his plea deal unraveled today. And so you have many people on the left and on the right being instantly certain about what is happening, what has happened, and what's going to happen next. And I'm telling you, no one knows. No one knows. None of us out here on the outside know exactly what is going on. Now, can you say Hunter Biden made some big life mistakes and choices? I think that's a fair thing. I think we do know that. He knows that. His parents know that. Now, they happen to live in the White House, but they know that and understand that from a very human standpoint. And anyone who's suffered with a child or a sibling or a friend who's gone through addiction, you get that. And all the decisions downstream that happen because of that addiction. All of the things that are sacrificed for the sake of that one thing, where in recovery, you get rid of that one thing and you get to have everything. But there are consequences. It is the absolute predictability of consequences. And Hunter Biden will go through the absolute predictability of consequences. And so I think one of the things that we have to be able and have to be willing to do in this country, and not just in our politics, but in our communities, in our families, in our neighborhoods, is we have to be willing to be the opposite of instantly certain, and we have to be willing to say, I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know what President Biden knew or when he knew it or if he knew it at all. I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. But we've become so obsessed in something becoming the next Watergate or the next way to impeach a president. We've so weaponized everything that we all have to be instantly certain about everything. And so Democrats today are talking about witch hunts, talking about agendas and weaponizing the system. Republicans are talking about sweetheart deals and corruption at the highest level. And I don't think any of them really know. And I would be the first to say, I don't know. I'm not sure. And so I think the thing that we should hope for and the thing that we should actually expect is a swift process. Justice should be swift. It should be transparent. And then we should be able to move on. That's the way it's supposed to work. But just remember, instant certainty is the enemy of truth, and it undermines trust in our institutions and in each other. That wraps it up for us today here on Inside Sources. I'm Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts,